On this edition of the program, a new set of polls from the New York Times has Donald Trump dominating in the Sunbelt and Biden's electoral hopes hanging on by a thread. It's caused quite a bit of panic amongst the Democrats. Should they just calm down? We bring on Evan Scrimshaw to talk through it. It's all coming up. Hello and welcome everybody to the Politics program for May 15th, 2024. Your old pal Justin Robert Young joining you here in Austin, Texas. We're going to get at you a little early because there is a very interesting moment that we had. And as we navigate through the story of the 2024 election, I do think that there are event points. I'm not saying that they are going to define the result. I'm just saying that when the books are written, these are the days, these are the moments that I believe will be the chapters. A warning sign that from then on you could never not ignore. A news story that defined the rest of the cycle. And in this case, it is a series of polls for which I will not only judge by the numbers, but by the reaction. The New York Times Siena polls run by Nate Cohn of the New York Times Upshot were bad for Joe Biden. Let's go ahead and take a look at them right now. Arizona, Trump up 6. Georgia, Trump up 9. Nevada, Trump up 13. Those are the three Sunbelt states, and it is what Harry Enton of CNN called a disaster. On the other side, you've got the Great Lakes. Donald Trump up 3 in Pennsylvania, 1 in Wisconsin, and 1 in Michigan. You get a little bit more of a similar but different story when it comes to the 5 wide, so including Kennedy, West, and Stein. But still, the point is this. Hispanic and black voters, according to all of those surveys, are abandoning Joe Biden in numbers that should raise alarm bells. Does that mean he's going to lose? Well, to answer a question like that, we got to bring on one of our besties. That is Evan Scrimshaw of the Lines. Let's get to that conversation right now. As we march into the summer, we have more and more data as we get into the final 6 months of this election, which means we periodically check in with our friend Evan Scrimshaw of thelines.com. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. Happy to be on.
All right. So last time we took kind of a larger look at demographics and stuff like that, but we had our first run of polls that I felt like it was worthwhile to come check in with you on. This is the New York Times Siena, who have had a very, very good reputation in terms of their methodology and have been pretty dead on over the last few cycles. And they paint a pretty bleak picture, at least in the Sunbelt, for Joe Biden. It's a very close race in the Great Lakes states, but I want to start here. Nevada, Arizona, Georgia. All 3 states went to Biden in 2020. The most likely scenarios in which he wins the presidency again involve him winning at least one of those 3. And head-to-head, he is down 6 in these polls, 13 in Nevada. 6 was Arizona, 13's Nevada, and Georgia is down 9. Is this like big flashing warning sign blaring a problem for Biden?
So I don't know the answer to this, and I think anybody who claims definitively either way is selling you a theory, not actual evidence, because Georgia, Nevada, and Arizona are obviously much more non-white than the Great Lakes states are. And this is just what you would expect from national polling that continues to point to the greatest racial realignment since 1964. Like, this is what you would expect. You would
Yeah.
expect a situation where Biden's numbers hold up much better in the Great Lakes states than they
In
do
whiter states.
exactly right. Um, like the fact that I did some work at sort of translating what some of these national polls might mean for states like a couple months ago, and yeah, this is what you would expect. Nevada and Arizona are obviously Hispanic heavy states. Trump is close to, if not winning, Hispanics in some of these polls, not just the Times polls, but more than that. And if Trump's at 22% of the black vote and Biden's in the 60s, yeah, then Georgia's going to be a blowout. Like those,
Yeah.
whether or not that's going to happen is secondary to the point, which is because we don't know if this is going to hold up. Plenty of people in 2020 got burned believing flat out unbelievable crosstabs. Spoiler alert, I was one of them, because it fit a narrative. But the problem is that, yeah, if you're down 9 in Georgia, if you're down 6 in Arizona, if you're down 13 in Nevada, it does raise the question of, will the campaign fight as aggressively for especially something like Georgia, which has no Senate seat, no competitive House races, and frankly, there's zero chance Georgia's going to be your 270th electoral vote. So it could be a situation where even if the polling is inaccurate, where bad polling begets campaign strategy decisions that end up making the bad polling accurate in the end, even if it wasn't accurate at the time.
How much of that, though, is a world in which they don't have infinite money? Because the Biden campaign is essentially going to have as much money as they want. They can be up on the air anywhere that they want to be. Now, they can spend it unwisely. They can spend it frivolously. But I don't think that this is a question of where they play on the map as it is what message they tailor to those voters. And that, I think, is the larger problem with the Biden campaign right now is I don't know exactly what their message is to voters. Aside from Trump bad. Trump bad, they've done very well.
Yeah, and that's a fair criticism. I think the counterpoint would be presumably the Obamas are going to do a lot more in-person campaigning this time than they did in 2020 because COVID is not an issue. And if the campaign is still seeing data that says they're down and down a lot in Georgia, I don't think you send as many bodies down there. I don't think you attempt the mobilization of the black community in Atlanta that you would do otherwise. But I think I do think the infinite money thing means they'll probably stay on TV everywhere.
Yeah.
But I think the big thing that's going to keep Democrats trying in the very super trying in Arizona and Nevada is, of course, Senate seats. And
yes,
even if even if Nevada is at a play, and even if they're not going to win it, and I'm not necessarily conceding that, but for the sake of this point, I am. You need Jackie Rosen because you can't lose badly enough to let Jackie Rosen also flip, and that's going to be the main question: is if the path to 270, if it's decided that the path to 270 runs through the Great Lakes, they're still going to have to fight Arizona and Nevada as if they need them to win, because they cannot risk Kerry Lake or Sam Brown in the Senate. Democrats just can't.
Almost more than anything that came out of the New York Times Siena, the thing that I would assume sends chills up the spine of Democratic operatives around the country was that John Ralston, essentially the only person who ever has their opinion paid attention to in terms of Nevada politics, said everything that he is seeing right now is not only consistent with this New York Times poll in Nevada that again had Trump up 13, but that he believes everything is in play up to and including the House seats for the Democrats.
Yeah, that should be terrifying. And even if it is a bit late, and I almost wonder if that poll might be the best thing that happened to the Democratic Party in Nevada, because sometimes campaigns need kicks in the ass, and getting that there might be very important to kickstart whatever outreach efforts, whatever sort of mobilization they need to get done. Might end up being a sort of grace. Democrats might end up being grateful for that, because looks like Democratic turnout and Democratic messaging is not landing with Hispanic voters right now, and they need to get that going if they're gonna save.
Well,
Not
let
a
me
Senate majority, save
read you
a
something that
narrow
literally just crossed my radar right before we started recording here on Tuesday morning. This from Axios, Hans Nichols and Alex Thompson reporting Biden's polling denial, why he doesn't believe his bad polling. Joe Biden does not believe his bad polling numbers, and neither do most of his closest advisors, according to people familiar with the matter. Now, obviously, look, nobody wants to see a raft of bad polling and immediately start screaming around with your hair on fire. But I don't know. I think that there's a real sense of listlessness to what the overall strategy here is. We've seen multiple different feints on it in terms of, okay, well, we're worried about the Sunbelt, so we're going to start to reverse some of the border stuff because we feel like we're getting killed on the border, especially when it comes to Arizona and Nevada and more of a deeper red state like Georgia. And then they don't do it. And then it's like, okay, well, we're exactly in the middle of the road on Israel. All we want to do is continue to say we are standing by Israel, but also we're going to halt these weapons. It does appear that Michigan is his best state, so I don't even know why he would want to hedge on that. I don't know. I mean, there's just everything can change, everything can go forward, but if we're going to apply that past production is indicative of future results, I don't get it. I don't understand where they're driving or even who they want their coalition to be.
So that is a definitely a fair critique. Here's the thing. So I was surprised by a lot of the discourse after the New York Times did the poll because the discourse was like very doom and gloom, and Biden's up 1 in Michigan, down 1 in Wisconsin, and down 3 in Pennsylvania, which is also known as he's barely down in states that add up to 270 for him. And I'm just going to make this point, which is the morning of the State of the Union, I went back and checked the 538 average last night as I was doing some prep for this. Biden has gained 3 points in Michigan since the morning of the State of the Union. He's gained 1.8 in Wisconsin, and he's gained 1.2 in Pennsylvania. Like, the swing state polls, or at the very least the Great Lakes swing state polls, have gotten a lot better for Biden. He's, essentially undone the Michigan damage. He certainly reverted Michigan back to its normal status as the most democratic of those 3 states. Quinnipiac last week had Biden up 6 in Wisconsin, which I don't think either of us believe is accurate, but is the sort of poll that you're going to start to see in a tied or tight-ish race. You're probably going to see a bunch of D3s and a bunch of R3s and, occasional D6 and whatever. And like the takeaway from yesterday for me was, okay, so he's close in states he needs, and he has to...
I mean, that's a thin map, though, Scrim. Like, if we're relying entirely on the Great Lakes states, that doesn't allow for a lot of leeway for some of these toss-ups to fall on the wrong side of the coin.
No, and I'm not here to say things are rosy. But like the way that those polls were talked about yesterday, people were acting as if like, unless you engage in frankly just embarrassing amounts of poll denial, and frankly, if I'm telling you it's embarrassing amounts of poll denial, I'm fully aware of the pot calling the all black here. I'm speaking from experience.
Yeah,
we don't have like for the level of sort of hysteria and like crosstab diving to be like, oh, this doesn't make any sense. It's like you can literally just take these results on their face. Biden still has a very credible path to 270, and you don't even have to get into anything beyond the fact that he has a very credible path. He's closed the gap pretty considerably in states leading up to 270, and let's be honest here, it's entirely possible that the pollsters in general, and the New York Times in specific, are engaging in a little bit of overcorrection. The Times, as good as they are, and I think Nate Cohn, is as methodologically rigorous as anybody, they did have Biden winning Wisconsin by 11 and, Michigan and Pennsylvania by 7 and 9.
Yeah.
Like, So a pollster overcorrecting a little bit, and then it's like that's not an unreasonable thing to believe. I think cross-tab diving is not the way you make that argument, but I think it's entirely. Biden has a perfectly good case. It's not a bulletproof case, but the case for Biden optimism is the Rust Belt was a bigger mess 3 months ago, 2 months ago, and he just undone about half the damage.
I mean, the bigger case for the Biden optimism is he's the president of the United States, and historically they tend to win re-election.
Well, yeah, but he's not doing the things that a president of the United States who's about to win re-election is going to do because he's not using the bleeping bully pulpit.
Well, I mean, I
feel like we make this point every time we're on together, which is just like, buddy, control the narrative. You're the president. Use it.
I again, and we'll get into it because I do want to see your opinion on what his coalition should be. But I think the reason we saw the hysteria around these polls is because there is a creeping sense from the left of wondering who exactly is driving this car. Like what is the plan? Where are things going? Because a few months ago, the plan was put Donald Trump on trial, put him up there. The more he's on television, the worse he's going to do. This is like 2020 all over again. He's going to be on trial. He is going to be a convicted felon. This is going to be a referendum on Donald Trump. And then hopefully everybody can put all of this mess behind us. Well, a lot of that making up of the damage happened between the State of the Union and Trump going on trial. And we're seeing the thing that I thought we were going to see when Trump went on trial, which is that it makes him more sympathetic. And some of these state polls, while they certainly have closed in the Great Lakes, which I don't think anybody who's realistic believes that this is going to be anything other than yet another toss-up election in those states, the Sunbelt stuff is alarming, and it is reverting back to where it was pre-State of the Union. So that's where I think the hysteria comes in, is that there is a wonder of, okay, well, what's going to change? Because it doesn't seem like the economy is going to get materially better. You hope everything in the Middle East wraps up, although nobody's really lost an election based on foreign policy. So what's going to be different between now and November?
So here's the thing. We have limited polls out of Arizona. Data Orbital did have Biden up. I think it was last week, which is something. Obviously, they're not as good a pollster as the New York Times. Siena. Nevada is notoriously hard to poll. I think Georgia is a real problem, and as much as it pains me to say it, I think Biden's probably at this point you have to acknowledge he's an underdog. As much as that pains me to say. But I think the main thing for Biden is that in the New York Times Siena poll, 20% more people blamed Biden for the loss of Roe and the loss of abortion rights across America than Donald Trump.
Yeah.
That is, in a sense, a very bad result, in the sense that, Jesus, you are not getting your message out well. But also, you're running competitive, and 20% more people blame you for the loss of abortion rights than Donald Trump. That is at least an opening. That is at least the kind of slack that you want if you're going to try and improve. Because it at least provides you with a group of people that could theoretically vote for you if you can effectively make the message that it's not his fault, that it's Clarence Thomas's, Amy Coney Barrett's.
But also, it's like, how does that happen? It's not like they have not been saying that as clearly as possible as they could for the last 2.5 years. And they think that message is the winning message because they credit that for the midterms.
Yeah, it's not a great. I think part of it's that people just don't love Joe Biden, and I think it's pretty. Donald Trump's presidency basically seems to have ended in January of 2020 in terms of public perception.
He left the White House when the virus left the lab.
And that's a real problem if you're trying, because the Biden campaign doesn't really want to fight about COVID, right?
No.
It doesn't really want to talk about 2020, which means that perception of the Trump White House, and specifically the Trump president and the Trump economy, sort
That's
of
it.
ends
There
in
we go.
January 2019 or January 2020, and it's like, well, yeah, the economy was pretty good in 2019. Things were pretty cheap in America in 2019. I understand the nostalgia for it. The problem for Democrats is that if you can't litigate 2020, if you've decided that for reasons you don't want to fight that fight, you have to then fight him on an economic message without using your best economic bullet. And frankly, I don't know that 2020 even is a good bullet, because I don't know that anybody blames Donald Trump
No, for the existence of the virus, no. You can say that, well, he should have handled it better, but then you get into the fact that lockdowns and, vaccine mandates aren't popular now.
And
they might have been popular in the moment, but they're not popular in hindsight.
And also Nancy Pelosi essentially ran the fiscal policy of the United States government in 2020. So it's not exactly like you can blame him for, overdosing on fiscal stimulus when the first thing he did in office was another mass dose.
Was more. Yes.
I think at some point the Democratic money edge is going to end up being fully actualized.
Yes.
He's been on the air now. The Democratic poll recovery did coincide with the State of the Union. I certainly am using the State of the Union as the date for it, but it also coincided with Biden finally putting some money on the air. If that starts to ramp up more and more, you could see, the polls get better. I think the court is the underrated weapon, and I think Biden needs to start putting on TV and start talking about the court or in a more explicit way. Like Clarence Thomas's face should be in every single TV ad, because it's both a way to get at he cost you abortion, but also look at how old this is. Wouldn't it be great if I could replace him?
Yeah, that would assume that he would retire and not just, hang out in his RV for another 4 years.
We have had the last two presidential election years have had a Supreme Court justice.
I've had a death. Yeah.
But just I do think the court needs to be a much more explicit enemy, that you are running against Trump's Supreme Court as much as you are running against Donald Trump, because this court has been a blockade of democratic priorities. They have engaged in, a considerable amount of judge-made law on a conservative side. They are recognizable hate figures to Democrats. And it's a way of aligning a lot of the intra-coalitional fights. Because the one thing that every Democrat, no matter your opinion on Israel, no matter your opinion on Joe Biden, no matter your opinion on anything, the one thing that every Democrat can agree on is that Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito and all of them suck. And if that becomes the rallying cry, it can help his numbers, I think.
So let's get into that, though, because now let's play a game called Let's Build Joe Biden's Coalition, his winning coalition. He obviously, at least based on the numbers that we've seen now, and I am with you, I am in a wait-and-see mode when it comes to Election Day on exactly how much the Black and Hispanic turnout is going to be different. I do believe it will show gains for Trump. Is it going to be on the same level that we are seeing in some of these polls? I'll wait and see. I'm not going to put any big bets on it. But it doesn't really appear that Joe Biden is going hard after that vote. He's put more stuff on the air, appealing explicitly to Nikki Haley voters. And the only people in that coalition that would be offended by stuff like, let's make sure that Clarence Thomas is replaced by a Democrat, would be the Nikki Haley voters.
Yeah, but the thing is, all these Nikki Haley voters that might theoretically vote for Biden all are pro-choice. So if you frame your Dobbs argument and your Supreme Court argument in one, I think you can align the fact that they might like some of the other conservative activist judge making and focus on the thing that most of the coalition agrees with. And the other thing I think that makes this case is that, yes, you do need these conservative, former Republicans, but generally speaking, these are not voters that have been turned off by Democrats sort of speaking to the Democratic Party. Like, basically didn't see a difference in suburban performance in 2022 based on how left-wing the candidates were. Raphael Warnock is more left-wing than Mark Kelly, but both of them gained roughly the same amount in their highly educated, formerly super Republican suburban areas.
Warnock did not run as very far left. Warnock ran as Black Jimmy Carter.
No, but he still did vote for a couple of Bernie Sanders' amendments during the IRA vote-a-thon. Like,
and if only he had a candidate that would point stuff like that out, he might have had to answer for it.
Right, but like Mark Kelly ideology didn't seem to be very predictive in 2022. It's possible that that's the failure of specific campaigns that disproved it. We are, I think, at a point where suburban voters, I don't think suburban voters need to be coddled to the extent that other parts of the coalition do. I think they understand and genuinely believe that Donald Trump is a threat. And because of that, they are more willing to accept a candidate that they are not ideologically in agreement with. And I know he is an individual and not necessarily a representative. But Mark Cuban being just deciding that his 2024 is just going to be immense Biden shilling is deeply funny to me because he is engaging in just hackery, right? Like,
yes,
defending Biden's proposed capital gains increase by being like, oh, yeah, well, there's no chance of getting that through the Senate, so I'm fine. I do think that's the thing. He, educated degree holders have a very simple view of Donald Trump. They don't like his abortion politics, and they despise January 6th. They genuinely believe him to be a threat to democracy and are therefore less concerned about the details of, fiscal policy or whatever, and have come to terms with the fact that they're voting for a guy who is less good for their own interests, because don't forget, a lot of these suburbanites who have trended left since 2012 or 2016, a lot of them got very big checks, saved a whole lot of money from the Trump tax cut, turned around and gave, a ton of that to Jamie Harrison and Amy McGrath and take your pick of Democrats in 2020.
And that's the thing is, I agree with that largely. I also don't think that you need to court them. And it's interesting to me that the Biden campaign has spent as much time putting ads like that on the air of like, hey, Nikki Haley voter, Trump doesn't like you. It's like, I think they know. I think there's a reason why there's a zombie Nikki Haley campaign, because there is just a class of Republicans that, to put it in one of your favorite terms, have been globally realigned. They are just willing to say, I am, even if I don't ever describe myself as a Democrat, I'm going to vote for anybody that is not Trump. And then eventually maybe I'll take a look back and say, oh, wait, this party that I used to belong to, I just don't belong to anymore. And that's where we're going to go. But I don't think you need to court him. I think that right now, Joe Biden has two major problems. Nobody trusts him on the economy, and he's got coalitional issues that the last vestiges of that Obama coalition seems like it is disintegrating in his hands.
So if I had more faith in the Biden campaign, the counterpoint to what you have just said is that, oh, well, they're courting Nikki Haley voters now so that they can focus on fixing their coalitional issues in the summer and the fall. The counterpoint is that I don't trust this. I don't trust that the Biden campaign is doing that. Is doing that two-step intentionally.
No. I think Joe Biden
stumble into.
But
I don't trust
this
her doing
was
that naturally.
in the book Lucky about the 2020 campaign that largely focuses on the Joe Biden apparatus. They describe that there is a inner circle that is like Joe, Jill, and a few people that he's known since his Senate either staff days or Senate colleague days. Then there's kind of the first outer ring that are technically given the largest roles in the campaign, your campaign directors and stuff like that. And then there's everybody else. And right now, what I'm seeing, especially when you're getting these things that, Joe Biden doesn't believe the polling, that to me is very much the inner circle. And that inner circle, knowing where they've been, I think they genuinely believe if we can take out the Nikki Haley leg of that stool, then Donald Trump can't stand.
And that's a risk, but the other thing is it's not like you have the most, to use the analogy, it's not like you have a stool with like 8 legs.
No,
right?
Well, that's but that's the thing is this gets into the you ain't black stuff. It's like I think he believes, look, every election since Joe Biden's been an adult, the black Americans have voted overwhelmingly for the Democratic nominee. Sometimes it's louder than others, but it will always happen. And I think he genuinely believes that, even if some of these numbers that are coming out in these polls are out and out scary. And it sounds like, when I listen to episodes of Drink Champs, it sounds like that they could be on the blaze.
Well, that's the thing is that, like, does Kamala not sense it? Like, I hate to be like the black person in the room should explain blackness to white people, but also, like, come on, guys, like, because the thing is, it is not it's not a crazy proposition, right? Because the thing about the black community is that they are not necessarily intrinsically progressive.
No.
It is a community that values faith and community and working together because we don't really trust the government. In theory, if the Republican Party could get its head out of its derriere, they could easily get 25% of the vote. And it is just legitimately prejudice that has stopped them from doing it, because there is a community of pro-life, active churchgoers that are also some of the Democratic Party's most loyal soldiers. And if the Democratic Party is not terrified of that, and terrified of the, younger men who kind of think that Biden is focused on other issues, especially given that, for the bulk of that bulk of his presidency, he was basically running Elizabeth Warren's policy agenda.
Yep.
It's a real concern, and I think the problem with the way Biden attempted to pivot to the center was that he pivoted to the center in a way to make white voters happy. And the problem is he needs to make a similar pivot, but I think the thing he needs to do is he needs to tell the left of the party to sit down and shut up on police. Because I think a smart on crime, we're going to be better.
Crime Bill 2.0?
Well, crime bill less stupid, let's say.
A new crime bill. Crime Bill 0, extreme crime bill.
Although I will just say, the fact that we've all just forgotten that the Violence Against Women Act was in the '94 crime bill is a true failure of the Democratic establishment. Just a true failure.
Not Joe. You listen to Joe talk, and I was there in the room for his dog face pony soldier thing, and I didn't even notice it when he said it because he kind of mumbled it into the mic and I couldn't hear it where I was in the room. But what I did remember in that was he went on and on about the Violence Against Women Act, which it got weird because he just kept graphically describing acts of domestic violence that in Joe's way of doing. I'm sure it sounded a little bit crisper when he was younger, but as an older man, it just sort of sounded like, "What are you talking about, Dad?" But yeah, he likes to talk about it. This gets into the other side of it, and this is the other part of I think where the terror kind of came in with these polls is he going to get more compelling? This is your update brought to you by TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Head on over there right now. Sign up for our $3 tier. You get 2 bonus episodes each and every week, no matter where in the world I am. And I'm all over the place. In Vegas, you guys got Vegas voice, Justin, on last Monday's edition of the program. And you will get me live from Orlando. You're going to get me in D.C. Fun times ahead. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. $3 level, 2 bonus episodes each and every week. Let's go ahead and get to the stories we didn't get a chance to talk about. President Joe Biden has escalated his ongoing trade war with China by announcing substantial tariff hikes on a range of imported goods, including electric vehicles, semiconductors, and other critical products. The move aims to bolster American industries that are central to the administration's clean energy goals. So the tariffs are excluded on some of the green energy stuff. In a statement, Biden highlighted the measures, and he said that they were in response to what he views as unfair competition practices by China, such as heavily subsidized production that allows Chinese companies to flood global markets with low-cost goods. The tariff increases are part of the broader strategy to protect and promote U.S. manufacturing, according to the White House, specifically in sectors that the administration considers crucial for future growth. The new tariff structure will see significant increases across various categories by the end of the year. For instance, tariffs on electric vehicles will jump from 25% to 100%. And semiconductors will see an increase from 25 to 50 by 2025. These adjustments are meant to create a more level playing field for U.S. industries against subsidized Chinese competition. The decision has drawn criticism from China, warning that the tariffs will undermine global efforts to green economic transition. Amid these tensions, the Biden administration continues to emphasize the need for such tariffs to protect American jobs and prevent China from dominating critical global supply chains in green energy and tech sectors. Oh, baby. I want to go back in time and read you guys a quote. This is from Twitter. If you think that tariffs are being paid by China, any freshman econ student could tell you that the American people are paying these tariffs. The cashiers at Target see what's going on. They know more about economics than you. That's slightly edited. It's actually from Joe Biden. It's about Donald Trump, and it was put out on Twitter on June 11th, 2019, slamming Donald Trump's tariffs on China. Obviously, we're in a bit of a different world here. Best I can see, and again, I'm not an econ dude, so I will allow you, email me in, theyoungamerican@gmail.com, if you have another read on this, but this is my view. It's a way to A, be tough on China, and B, look out for American-produced EVs. Here's the problem. It doesn't make EVs cheaper. It makes EVs more expensive, but gives you less options for them. Now, I'm sympathetic to tariffs more than the most free market of all of my friends. But this is certainly something that I did not quite expect at this stage in the game. Doesn't exactly reek of confidence. I'll put it that way. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan is set to visit Saudi Arabia and Israel as tensions continue to escalate over the potential military invasion from the IDF into Rafah, Gaza. The trip is, of course, critical as all the rest of them have been, as President Biden has threatened to withhold weapons from Israel if they launch a significant operation in Rafah, which he has outlined is a red line. They're already in Rafah. I don't know why this is the hill they want to die on. We move on. The U.S. aims to prevent an expansion of Israeli military actions before high-level talks in Washington, hoping to maintain the momentum toward a significant U.S.-Saudi mega deal that could potentially include normalizing Saudi-Israeli relations and bring a different level of calm to the future of Gaza. The Biden administration is particularly concerned that a major Israeli operation in Rafah could jeopardize not only the prospective peace agreement with Saudi Arabia, but also the broader regional stability and cooperation against mutual threats like Iran. Despite these diplomatic efforts, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu remains publicly committed to proceeding with the Rafah operation. The outcome of Sullivan's negotiation could lead to a pivotal moment where Netanyahu must choose between pursuing the Rafah invasion, potentially isolating Israel, or embracing a broader peace initiative with significant long-term benefits for regional security and relations, or at least that is the way that the United States State Department would spell it out. But you would need an awful big gift to the Israelis to have them go back on their stated goal of eliminating Hamas. You just need to. I don't think anybody in the Israeli government can stay in the Israeli government if they do not kill Yahya Sinwar. That's it. The head of Hamas in Gaza. He's allegedly in Rafah. I don't know. Fog of war. Nobody knows exactly what's going on. But Lord, I don't get the American side of it. I really don't. And by the way, this is, I think, the fourth time we've gone to Riyadh. So the United States, and let's look at this in a purely selfish position for the Biden administration. You guys want to get reelected, right? So you're telling me you are relying on the largesse, or at the very least, the logical processing of Hamas and the House of Saud. Now, the House of Saud, Mohammed bin Salman, I can understand. Make a deal with him. If the deal is sweet enough, he'll make it. I think he is, he's got a lot to gain. So you can probably look at him as a fairly reliable actor, although it's still Saudi Arabia. Relying on Hamas, I have no idea what you're doing. Because you can't really rely on Hamas. You can squeeze people that pay Hamas. You can squeeze the Qataris. You can try and squeeze the Iranians. But you can't squeeze Hamas. You can't squeeze Sinwar. He's defecating into a bucket in a basement. Desperately trying to keep, 20 people alive that he thinks is going to save his life. I just don't understand it. I don't. Finally, the Democratic primary in Maryland features a critical showdown between Representative David Trone and Prince George's County Executive Angela Brooks, setting the stage for a significant battle of the general Senate election. Trone, a wealthy entrepreneur, has poured an unprecedented $55 million into his campaign, raising questions about whether his financial clout can outmuscle the support that Brooks has, which is pretty much the rest of the delegation of Democratic leadership in Congress. She's got all of them. They all back Brooks, but leading into the election tonight, Tuesday night, well, she's trailing. Brooks could become Maryland's first black senator. And again, she enjoys the backing of the entire Democratic establishment from the state. The race will not only test the influence of money versus the political machine, but also delve into sensitive issues of race and gender dynamics in politics. The Democratic nominee will likely face former Governor Larry Hogan, a moderate Republican with considerable popularity in the state, putting a potential threat to what is usually a safe seat for Democrats. Hogan's candidacy could force the Democratic Party to divert resources from other key Senate races nationwide. The primary battle is exacerbated by Trone's controversial comments and ads, which has turned increasingly contentious, reflecting broader tensions within the party and the significant stakes involved. If you have not seen, Trone had a bit of an oopsie. It's a big oopsie. Accidentally said a racial slur while trying to say the word bugaboo. If you don't know what word I'm talking about, ask your racist uncle. As the primary draws to a close tonight, the focus will shift on how well the Democratic nominee can consolidate support to counter Hogan's challenge, specifically on pivotal issues like abortion, where Maryland voters' preference could play a crucial role in the general election. It's a very big uphill battle for Hogan. Maryland is very, very, very deep blue, but Hogan's popular. So we'll see. Trone versus also Brooks. That's the reason why we're releasing this a little early. So you guys can have all this going into the election. We'll talk about the election on the next episode. But that's your update. TakePoliticsSeriously.com is where you need to go if you would like to get 2 bonus episodes each and every week. Now, back to Scrim. The more they have to put on his schedule, they already tried to run him out for 2 weeks, and they came out of that experiment saying Joe's remarks are going to be shorter. We're gonna take him from 40 minutes to 25 minutes to make sure that he's crisp and clear and just gets everything out there. That does not seem to me like a campaign that is ready to put a lot of miles on somebody who was prone to making mistakes when he was young. And I think last week had a clip where he just read last name off the teleprompter for somebody that he was telling a personal anecdote about.
Yeah. I mean, Joe Biden being the Democratic nominee is not great. I defended it mostly because there wasn't a super better viable option, but don't necessarily love the fact that he was the best option.
There are liabilities to the candidate.
Yeah, I think what Biden needs to do is make this is almost decentralize himself from this campaign, right? Which is to run much more of a parliamentary election campaign. In Ontario 2018, Doug Ford, the brother of former Toronto mayor and crack smoker Rob Ford, hit a polling bump in the middle of the campaign and basically spent the next day campaigning with his inner cabinet, including a few very senior women, and just said, "This is my team." Compare it against his main opposition, which was a team full of crackpots and crazy people. And I think that campaign works. I think that campaign is kind of what Biden needs to do. He needs to focus on the team he has. He needs to put Pete Buttigieg everywhere because Mayor Pete is, Jesus, he's a much better communicator than basically anyone else in American politics right now. But I think he needs to put Kamala front and center. I think he needs to put Pete front and center. I think he needs to he needs to use whatever favors, whatever compromise, whatever he has on Barack Obama. He needs to get this man on a cross-country tour, and he needs to get that going fast. Because this Obama thing where he shows up in October and does 7 speeches, that ain't gonna be enough this time.
You don't think Obama the closer is the move for him this year?
I think we need Obama, the starting pitcher who ends up pitching 4.5 innings.
You need the opener, the middle relief, and the closer. In fact, step it up when it comes to 3 weeks from Election Day.
I think Obama basically needs to be on. I think he needs to start coming out publicly now, doing just a couple speeches before the convention. Because the thing is, Democratic unity is very important, and different parts of the coalition are going to like different parts of that unity. But you need Bernie Sanders out there, you need Liz Warren out there, you need Pete out there, Klobuchar needs to do some events. Everyone needs to be put on the shoulder of the wheel. And I think the good thing is that I think all of these people will do it. But
Well, I mean, if even because half the names that you just read off are going to be the 2028 primary, so it's going to make sense
that,
for everybody.
Another reason that you'll be able to get the entire Senate to help you out is that they all want. None of them want to be accused of disloyalty, because that will end their chances in 28 if they are deemed to have not done enough.
That being said, they haven't done it yet. I think listening to Hacks on Tap, like your strategy is Axelrod's strategy. Axelrod's strategy is, this is the super surrogate campaign. Every time he's out there, he's out with 5 people. You want all those people on television like they have never been on television before, doing media that they would have never otherwise done. You need to flood the zone when it comes to competent Democratic politicians, and then say, we believe in Joe Biden. This is the most important election. If you don't vote now, you have no idea what's going to happen to not just abortion rights, all of your rights with Donald Trump. He is the January 6th president, and this is a existential crisis. That is the strategy. And yet, we haven't seen it. Joe Biden is still the center. He is still up there, being the center of attention in a world that we don't quite know what he is saying. And the folks that are on television a lot are his cabinet, half of whom I think have done stuff that in other administrations would have got him fired. I don't know a Secretary of Defense or a Secretary of State that would have survived the Afghanistan pullout in another administration. Even Mayor Pete, I think that he's done a great job, in terms of communicating the messages that he wants to get out. He's a very dogged messenger, but I don't think there's a lot of people that think that transportation is going well when planes are falling apart in the sky.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I think that's a perfectly fair critique. I mean, the Biden cabinet is a very weird set of people, because it's not a good sales job cabinet, and it doesn't seem like it's the world's most competent cabinet either.
No.
It is sort of this like weird in between, because it's not a technocrats cabinet, and it's not the like, oh, should we just put our like 7 best communicators here and everyone's just basically auditioning for my job after. I mean, I think the counterpoint to all of this is that it's May. And I know it doesn't feel like it's May because we've been doing this for so long.
Of course. And it is. But before I'm going to cut you off, because is it May when we know these guys so well and we're not going to learn anything? That we're already on our 4th lap of, hey, Joe's got dementia, Trump's a felon. I think when we're at that point and everybody is in their blue shirts and their red shirts, what are we going to learn that's going to change the fundamentals of the race?
So I agree with that, but also you're telling me that there are polls that say that Donald Trump is suddenly going to win 27% of the black vote. So clearly there's a disconnect.
Something's different.
Right.
Yeah.
So clearly time can change things. Clearly voters, I mean, we know voters' memory at this point is much, we just don't retain information the way that we do. We don't hold things against people the way that we do. Things that should have ended campaigns, that happened 4 months out. And I mean, here's the other thing. Voters didn't care, because remember, the Dobbs decision leaked in May.
Yes.
And everyone was like, oh, is Biden getting out a polling surge? That he didn't. And everyone's like, oh, God. So it's still going to be a red wave, even with Dobbs. And then Dobbs happens, and then he gets the polling surge. Like, I do think there is even if people sort of think they know how they'll react to news events, they still end up reacting in new and novel ways. I think if Trump is convicted in New York, I don't know that, even if I frankly don't really know, I'm just going to fire off my hot take.
Go.
We're going to start litigating, maybe by the letter of the law, illegal in-kind contributions I feel like basically every major party presidential campaign of the last 75 years can probably get prosecuted.
Yes.
Um,
And that was the other big kind of moment in capital T, capital D, the discourse, was the Fareed Zakaria monologue that went viral, where he said the same thing, and he laid out a very a pessimistic case for Joe Biden's chances in November, but made the point in plain terms: I don't believe Donald Trump would be on trial if his name wasn't Donald Trump for those crimes. And that's where I've said from the very beginning, as soon as those indictments started coming in, and it wasn't just that he started winning the primary, started pulling ahead of DeSantis, and you can criticize the DeSantis campaign. We've done that a million times. But he also started winning independents. And that's when he started to establish his lead against Joe Biden in general election polling. I think that case specifically, and I don't know which way would be better for him or Joe Biden, either that he gets convicted or he gets off, but that's looked at increasingly as an excuse to come back and think about Donald Trump again. Because I don't think in general people look at those charges as real. I think they look at them as a DA that's trying to slam dunk Trump. And if that's the case, and now Trump's every day coming out and doing his Jay Leno monologue, doing headlines for the assembled press outside of the courtroom. And now, today Vivek Ramaswamy's there, JD Vance is there. It's now become a place where it's safe and exciting for other politicians to sit with him in court. And that doesn't happen if they feel like it's dangerous or it's messy. They're doing it because they feel it's going to give them a bump.
So I think the counterpoint to all of that, and I think all of that is a very fair point. I think the counterpoint to that is if he's convicted, Democrats get to run ads saying that he's a convicted felon. Convicted felon Donald Trump. Right, exactly. And at some level, voters will, at least theoretically, the details, the salient details of this case will get lost to time, and him being convicted felon Donald Trump will remain. And that, I think, would help him. But I do think a lot of the strategy of let's let the courts take Trump out, I think Democrats never really got off the train that the courts were going to be the solution to American fascism, and you're never beating fascism in a courthouse. You have to beat it at the ballot box. And, it's not great that a lot of hopes and prayers of Democrats have been focused on the court system or, God, during the Trump presidency, Robert Mueller or whatever. It's like, guys, you're going to have to win this. Because if you only win on some technicality, we tossed him off enough ballots, like the stupid Colorado 14th Amendment thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you only win on a technicality, spoiler alert, America's going to come back and you're going to elect him worse, or some acolyte of his who's going to be, frankly, probably more dangerous because he won't be as personally odious. You have to win this at the ballot box, and you have to win this by convincing your own voters that Trump is not just decent times and the ability to get, 2 pizzas for $22 on DoorDash.
Yeah.
And I think the coalition is ready to listen. I do, because clearly parts of the coalition have listened. Clearly the Great Lakes, parts of the coalition have listened. And I think the thing about Biden being not particularly ideological himself means that in theory he will do what it takes to win. The problem is he needs to start listening to the other parts of the party, and I think much more importantly, I think the Black Caucus, Hakeem Jeffries, Kamala Harris, I think they need to step up and start explaining to him the language he needs to start speaking in, and they need to start, and then eventually once he gets that, they need to start putting him like Joe Biden do the Breakfast Club. I know that's like I know that's such a cliche thing for a white guy to say, but also Joe Biden do the Breakfast Club.
I mean, he's going to have to, right? That's the comeback to you're not black. He's going to have to do the Breakfast Club, which means Trump doing the Breakfast Club, which I think will honestly be better radio. But I agree with you. In that case, though, they got to fight for Georgia. If you want to signal, if you want to signal to black Americans, you have to fight for Atlanta. You have to make sure that you go down there and you give it your level best, even if you're going to lose. The worry is that you pointed out, State of the Union. Boom. He gets a big moment up on stage, gives a fiery speech. There's no Sleepy Joe. He is almost too combative, and that's great, right? Because if people are arguing about whether or not he's too angry, then no one's going to say that he is, going to fall asleep and start farting. So you go from there to now, you see whatever traction that you have. And yeah, the news hasn't been great. I think they would have loved to have a cooler inflation report. They would have loved for the Fed to be signaling rate cuts by election day. So you don't get that. But not a lot has, I guess Israel, but again, that's one of those things where you don't really lose on foreign policy. Even Jimmy Carter didn't lose on the Iranian hostages. He lost on inflation. And he's still here. There might be a moment where things really go wrong on issues that would really hurt you. Like, let's say there's a Lake and Riley plus situation with somebody that was led over the border. Let's say that we do fall into some kind of depression. That's the worry I have for the Biden campaign, is that I don't think things have gone particularly wrong for him in the first few months of this year. And it's listless at best, and maybe making up for a little bit of listlessness. It's making up for that 3-point deficit in the Great Lakes states, and that's pretty much it. And then going reverse course in the Sunbelt.
Yeah, I think it has been a relatively benign time domestically, and I think that banking on that is not a certainty. I think the chances that the U.S. Supreme Court sort of signals something stupid between now and then between now and the election is not
impossible.
I think it's possible that the Middle East could be wrapped up this month in terms of being an active political problem. It can be
this chapter might be over. The Middle East has a strange habit of just continuing on and on.
Yeah, it's never going to end, but it'll sort of fall off the front pages for a bit. Honestly, I think what Biden needs to do, if he needs to spend a weekend in Atlanta. This is I was thinking about this as you were saying. I think the thing he needs to do, and I think the way he needs to sort of signal to the black community that he's all in, he needs to go to Atlanta. He needs to attend a church service at Ebenezer Baptist, which is, of course, the
Warnock's church and MLK Jr.'s church. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he needs to walk out with Warnock and give a fiery speech in front of the church. He needs to. And I think it needs to be a sort of a speech for the black community, flanked by the black community. And I think that's the kind of sort of, stunts, sort of gimmicks. But here's the thing. It's perfectly fine to be gimmicky. I think we have sort of decreed stunts and gimmicks as like sort of, beneath us. It's like, no, actually, it's very much not. The political staging is a very valuable way of doing it. Picking locations and picking moments, they matter. And I think it's really underratedly valuable that the pastor at arguably the most famous black church in America is literally in your Senate caucus. And I feel you should probably use and abuse that fact.
We are in a cycle where his opponent got cheered in Harlem because he just was going from bodega to bodega. that he's getting mobbed at Chick-fil-A in Georgia. The stunts that you're talking about, Trump is doing.
Right. And I think Biden needs to step it up because he's not. Because at the end of the day, yes, the Trump campaign does have a very racist white Republican view of how you win the black community. The like, oh, we'll just sell overpriced sneakers and suddenly that's going to like endear him. Like, yeah, obviously that stuff is stupid. It's the same thinking that led to, oh, let's just run Herschel Walker and he'll get 22% of the black vote.
Yeah.
Sure. But here's the thing. Just because the Republican Party is not thinking about things coherently doesn't mean they can't also win 17% of the black vote.
Well, here's the reality. The reality is I don't care what stunt you do. If right after that stunt, any of those voters go get snacks, it's going to be $70, and they're going to be pissed off, and they're going to say, "Man, it was really, really cool when those snacks were not $70." When was that? Oh, when Trump was president.
Right, and I think there is a certain amount of dismissiveness amongst liberals and Democrats that there is no. Democrats like to pretend that there is no legitimate reason to vote for Donald Trump.
Yeah,
and I completely understand why voters consider 2019 to be a panacea compared to 2024. I do understand it. I disagree, but I understand it. And a lot of times, Democrats act like Trump is so odious that the only option is to vote Democratic. And I've certainly felt that way about him in the past, but Democrats need to stop wanting the public to care about the issues that they want them to care about and need to start acknowledging where the public are, not where they want the public to be. And I think if Biden shows some contrition, I think if Biden should probably sit down with, I'm going to say Lester Holt, and should probably just, admit, he hasn't been perfect. I think a bit of humility would probably be a very good contrast to Trump's "I will never admit I was wrong about literally anything ever in my life."
Well, and it would go a long way just to be able to reset your narratives. Because on the economy, here's the problem why they lost the reins on it. Whenever you say economy, they say, look at the unemployment rate. Biggest number of jobs that have ever been created in a single administration. I forget who was the other person of this clip, but Nancy Pelosi was on like MSNBC, like not an unfriendly place. She parrots that line. The host says, well, yeah, we were coming out of COVID. And Pelosi rips her head off and says, look, if you want to be an apologist for Donald Trump, then you're allowed. My fear with the Democratic power structure now is that they do have blinders on. They do believe this is actually a great economy. The problem is we're just not messaging it well. They do believe that Joe Biden is somebody that people look at with esteem. They just need to make sure that they put him in the right position. They do believe that people still look at Joe Biden as a steady hand on the wheel when it comes to foreign policy, when from my vantage point, the foreign policy record that he has in 4 years is the one I was afraid Donald Trump was going to have after 2016. So if you take a step back and you say, all right, economically, this is not what we wanted. We have done a good job when it's come to jobs. We need to do a lot better when it comes to inflation. Make the point that we're better off than Europe or Canada. 0.3, 0.4, take 3 lumps and then say, but also we're starting from a good position. Don't lead with that. Don't be so defensive. Because I do think that that's a further alienation, and it gets Democrats to the place where I think they are at their worst, which is trust me, idiot. Everything's going to be better. Just vote.
Yeah, God, well, I can't believe I'm invoking 2 different Ontario provincial elections in this episode. But in 2011, the Liberal Premier of Ontario was in a bad way. He was perceived as arrogant as hell, and his first ad was just him talking straight to camera, white background. He admitted he hadn't been perfect. The first 20 seconds of the ad is him saying, we haven't got everything right. The back half of the ad is him defending parts of the record. And because he finally showed some amount of contrition,
Yeah.
voters entirely flipped on him. And they went, oh, did not realize you were capable of that, which made the second half of the ad defending the record, which he had many legitimate things to defend and many things that were important, similar to Biden, actually. It made people more willing to listen to the second half of the message, to listen to defending the record. And I think if Biden can lead with, I haven't gotten everything right, obviously this has been a very turbulent time and we've had to make decisions with imperfect information. Obviously, with the benefit of hindsight, I would have done things differently. If you lead with that, it makes but also we've invested more money than anybody to fight climate change. We've invested more in building roads, bridges, and yada, 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 and take your pick of the message. It makes the second half of that message more palatable to people if you admit in the first half of the message that things have not been perfect, you haven't gotten everything right. Especially when you were running against a guy who has quite literally never admitted that he has done anything other
that he's wrong on anything ever
right
in history. Yeah. Well, I'm going to be honest with you, Scrim. I don't know if Biden's capable of that. I don't know if that's something that is in his playbook. I think we both agree that a resetting of the message based in humility would play well with his blue collar Scranton Joe kind of thing, but we haven't seen it yet, and I don't know if we are going to see it.
The thing is, there is plenty of time, and the big thing is, he's not that far away. And I was saying this to everybody.
It's gonna be a close election. That's what people. The Trump campaign has been trying to message, and there's been, I guess, 2 polls on this now that show Virginia margin of error. I don't buy it. I don't think that it's real, because if it's real, then the election's over. If Virginia's in play, then fast forward to November, it's over. But I think that there's a reason why the Trump campaign feels that they can go on offense, because they want some of that money advantage to be poured into Richmond.
Yeah, exactly. And if I'm the Biden campaign, I strenuously avoid falling for that bait, because, yeah, at the end of the day, it's the same reason why Trump's 2020 campaign manager did a call and said, if Democrats really want to contest Texas, I'll pay for their first ad buy.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if the Trump campaign was losing Texas in 2020, they were already
it was done. It's over.
Paddle, and same with Democrats. I will say, I think the one thing that I was surprised by, why did the New York Times drop all 6 polls in one day? You could have split them up. You could have gotten 2 days of the news cycle out of it. And I was only thinking about this because
Sunbelt polls one day and Great Lakes polls the next day.
Yeah, because I was thinking about it. I was saying to somebody who was freaking out, I'm like, if the only thing you saw was the Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania polls, how'd you feel? And you'd be like, I'd feel pretty good. And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. Well, that's 270. Like, calm down. But it did make me think, like, I think the way that the coverage rolled out those polls made people think that he's further away from a victory. And at the end of the day, we all love to talk about stretch plays, and we all love to talk about Blue Texas and Red Virginia and whatever. Just win, baby. All you got to do is
I'm a little bit more on the side of the hysteria than you are, because I do think that if the thing that you have to come out of this with is like, yeah, technically he still has a path for a sitting president, then you got holes in the boat, and there needs to be some urgency in terms of patching them. But
yeah, but we're just never going to get the big, he's the incumbent, the other guy runs the other party doesn't, none of the big names of the other party want to run against him. and he, wins 380 electoral. We're just not getting that anymore. We're too polarized. We're too partisan. Like, that's just not going to happen anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're going to be into our second cycle where there's a gigantic asterisk on that. I guess the last election where we have seen a strong incumbent advantage was Obama against Romney. 2020, you have COVID. 2024, you have an ex-president running. So it's hard to just say, well, you should have an advantage. But I do think that incumbency does give you a lot of advantages. The problem is that Biden running on his record is a challenge. And so you have to say what you're going to do going forward. And that's the other, I don't know. We're already at time here, so I don't want to go into my whole abortion thing for the 50th time because we have, 6 months between now and election day. But I'll use that as an excuse to thank our guest, Mr. Evan Scrimshaw of the Lines. Scrim, what do you got cooking?
Political betting, NHL, NFL, and PGA Championship stuff at thelines.com. General political writing at scrimshaw.substack.com. I'm really just preparing to watch 4 days of golf. So my tweets at eScrimshaw for tweets, but they will mostly just be me.
Mostly about golf.
They will be me sweating a Scotty Scheffler exotic and despairing at the state of Jordan Spieth's game.
You told our PX3 faithful to ride the Nuggets, and there was a point at the end of last week where it looked bleak. Is there anything that you'd like to revise here when it comes to the Nuggets, or are you still saying trust the Joker and everything will be okay?
Heart of the champion, baby. And frankly, if Minnesota couldn't take them out in Minnesota, if they couldn't get a game off them, the Celtics look like trash. I don't know what they are doing. I don't know what is wrong with them. Do they just not care? But
I cannot wait for them to just get eviscerated. Someone's going to eviscerate them. Either they're going to get. Either Indiana's going to win this series against the Knicks, and then we'll get a couple games where they each score 130 points, and Indiana will be able to win more of them, or they get absolutely destroyed in the NBA Finals. But either way, I have never disliked a team more than I dislike this Celtics team.
Every single person who has tried to tell us that Jason Tatum is that guy, no, he is not. I am sorry,
he's not.
He is just fundamentally not that guy. I mean, I don't really care who wins the other West Series. Denver, if Denver gets through Minnesota, and I have all the faith that they can, given what they did in the 2 games in Minnesota. If they get through Minnesota, they're winning the championship, and I frankly don't even think it's going to be particularly difficult.
Yeah. Well, tell you what, there's still time, friends. There's still time. Place your bets. Until then, we all thank Mr. Evan Scrimshaw. Thanks a lot, buddy.
Thanks for having me.
And that'll wrap it up for us today. Politics, written and hosted by me, Justin Robert Young, for Dog and Pony Show Audio in Austin, Texas. You want to send me an email? It is theyoungamerican@gmail.com. And as I'm going to tell you guys, coming up on Friday, we're doing an AMA. A lot of travel on the schedule. We had a bit of a mix-up with one of our guests. So I'm going to talk all about the Trump trial because as I record this, Michael Cohen is being cross-examined. So we'll know the entirety of the people's case against Donald Trump. And so Friday's episode will be half that and then half whatever you guys would like to ask as we head in to the meat of our 2024 coverage. Thoughts, suggestions, bring them all. theyoungamerican@gmail.com. You can follow, find, and share clips of this show. Justin R. Young on TikTok. Instagram is Justin R. Young. YouTube is at politics. YouTube.com/@politics. You can hit me up on Twitter, Justin R. Young. You can find the audio version of this podcast to share with your friends, family, and clergy. px3podcast.com. Easy for me to say. Support us with a one-time donation. PayPal.me/PayJury. Venmo is Justin-Young-20. Cash App is PX3Cash. And you can send me anything you'd like in the mail. P.O. Box 153184. Again, that is Post Office Box 153184. Austin, Texas 78715. The only place you get bonus content on this show is TakePoliticsSeriously.com. $3 tier gets you 2 bonus podcasts per week covering all the news we missed on our free podcasting schedule. And our Titanic $10 tier gets your name read at the end of the show like these fine folks, including Sugar Brady, Sam, John, Niemeister, Edwin, invoke Gloria Young for King of the New World Order, Brian, Edison, Jeremy, a dog named Checkers, Sarah, Jeannie, Matthew, Dr. G, Shad, Chill, Dustin, Brad, D. Laser, Nick, just another pilot, middle-aged Mike, Utah, Jimmy, Montana, the Jen, Alo, D. Reilly, Andrew, Lisa, Fat Tony's PJs from New York, Devon, the CFP, Gloria, Gray Zone, Peapaw, J. Neil, John, DP4 Bongo, Neil, his nerdiness Charles, Audrey stole Adler's spot, Darren, Idris Orslanian, Berkeley, Stephen, Pneumatic Terran, Molly's delightful demeanor, Adam, Chief Andy, Robert, Casey, Paul, and Bluefront and the Lenina. You want to join their ranks? One place to do it. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. And that's gonna be it for us today. Trump trial and AMA on Friday. I will see you Thursday if you're a $3 club member or above. Until next time, this is your old pal Justin Robert Young saying, some shows talk about politics, others talk about politics, and still more, they discuss politics. But this is the only program that dares discuss all three.